Hello, thank you for joining me today again on the Church History Trail. And I apologise for the last wee video because my battery was very low and it actually cut off. But what we're going to do now is we're going to talk to Sandra, and she's going to show us a memorial here to the war and also a few other wee things as well connected with Thomas Andrews and the Titanic. So hello Sandra again. And so what have we got here then?
Okay, this is the War Memorial. We had looked at the photograph album and we had seen the wedding of Nina and Lawrence Hind. Sadly, the marriage was not that long. I think they were married in 1906, and sadly he had died in the First World War. So the memorial, the family had obviously spent a lot of time making sure there would be memorials to the dead. I think because they had the big memorial for Thomas Andrews in the town, they realised this was just for one person, and lots of families had lost sons. So the family had all the expertise. They got the committee together, they got the names gathered up, they got the memorial commissioned, and they put one in the square, there's one in the mill, and there's also one in our own church here. I think there's others in other churches in the town, but this is the one that we have. And you can see here, the first name is Lawrence Hind. He actually was somebody who had lived in England, so strictly speaking he doesn't have an awful lot to do with Comber other than being married in this church.
And he was a lieutenant colonel as well, there it says.
Yes indeed. If you go on the website you can actually see a report of how he had died. And very sad because he left a young widow with 3 young girls. She came back to Comber and they were brought up in Ardara, and they married and lived their lives here. Some of the other names now actually also were not actually resident in Comber at the time of the war. You can see here there's a Robert D. Niblock, and it was actually his brother who, in his shop, the people came to record the names of the dead for the memorial. Robert had actually moved to Australia and he died at Gallipoli. Some of the other names now, there's a Harold Andrews, and he had been a young child in Comber, but his mother had moved across to England.
Is he anything to...
Oh yes, he would be a cousin of Thomas Andrews. And a very interesting person because he's actually involved in the foundation of Speak Airport in Liverpool, and had been in the Spanish Civil War, and seemed to be quite involved in that as well. There's a little bit of a suspicion he might have been involved in intelligence, but we're not too sure about that. You can't find out a lot about that. So again, with the War Memorial, very interesting. Again, Comber did have the War Memorial very early. Newtownards didn't, and the story goes that the people in Newtownards were so annoyed at this that they actually built a snow memorial, and there's one photograph of this, and this was in order to shame the council into taking some action. So when they did it properly. They put the proper square just opposite the priory, and it's quite an impressive cenotaph that they have there. But again, as I say, Comber was ahead of Newtownards in all of this and getting the memorials together.
And what's this here then? Who's this gentleman here?
Okay, this is a bust of John Miller. I can actually turn it around and you'll be able to see his name at the back here. Okay, just a bit hard to see, but... So John Miller was a local distiller, and he had actually been born in Downpatrick. He had gone to work as an excise man up in the Nevada, and we always sort of reckon that he had worked out that there was more money to be made in actually selling drink than there would have been in trying to stop the smugglers. But he came down to Comber, he bought in the distillery, and his house is in the square. And he made quite a bit of money. Sadly, he had no family of his own. His wife was Agnes Perry, and if you look up behind you, you'll be able to see a portrait of her.
Oh yes.
Now the portrait, it looks a bit grim, she's wearing a black dress, but if you're up close, it actually is quite interesting. She's got lovely gold jewellery, a beautiful locket. She's holding a very ornate Bible, and the headdress, there's actually some quite delicate flowers in it. Sadly, Agnes died quite young. I think she was only about 40. Her husband then was a widower, and this is in here, this is John Miller again.
The same man in the bust?
Same man.
Yes.
So he then had his sister who came to live with him in the square in Comber. He's getting older, he's getting maybe not so well, but eventually she dies, and at that point then It's Lord Perry's mother with her daughter comes to live in the square in Cumber. Lord Perry at this stage is actually an apprentice up in Harland and Wolff, and he's working up in Belfast. So he comes home at the weekends by train, and he will spend his weekends in Cumber with his mum and his sister and his Uncle John. So Uncle John, he in a sense is a father figure to the young Eliza Perry and to William James Perry. And when Eliza marries, her husband, Thomas Andrews, his father is also dead. So this Uncle John is a very important figure for the family. He really is the grandfather figure for these children. So if Thomas had a grandfather, it would have been John Miller. He's the only person who would have had that status in his family.
And what relations were they again to Thomas?
He is a great uncle of Thomas.
Of Thomas Andrews, the Titanic man, yes. Now, I believe, Sandra, that there was a wee bit of confusion over this man here. So what can you tell us about this?
Okay, this bust, whenever we came here, and that would have been in Strong Road 1986, we asked around. Nobody had any idea who this was. And we heard various theories. We thought it was maybe one of the Andrewses. We actually have a denominational video, and in it somebody thought it was Henry Montgomery. So in the video they show this bust and say it was Henry Montgomery. That's the one person it definitely was not. At the back of it, and I don't know if you can actually take your camera around to see that, it actually says Shakespeare Wood and it says Rome. Now Shakespeare Wood, he actually had gone to Rome and had a studio in Rome, so he's very proud of the fact that he'd been in Rome. But he came to Belfast and made a lot of busts for very prominent citizens in Ireland. And it was actually your colleague Desi Rainey who had found a newspaper report, and he had spotted, because he had known that I had been very curious about this for a long period of time, and thanks to Desi we got the final piece into the jigsaw, because in it did say that Shakespeare Wood was displaying a lot of his work in Belfast, and one of the busts was of John Miller of Cumber. So finally we have got to know who this gentleman is.
And we've got Desi to thank for that.
Hello.
Thank you, Desi. So that's fantastic. Again, thank you for your hospitality, and thank you for the history, and also thank you for the history that you've actually been given today to us. And a lot of this I have never heard before, and so it was great to be able to hear this from yourself and also your husband, Sandra. So again, I'll leave you with the wee bust here, and if you enjoy the channel, then please like and subscribe. And also, you can actually see the church here where Thomas Andrews, the Titanic designer, actually came to. But if you phone or get in touch with Sandra here and Ian, they'll certainly be only too glad to give you a bit of the history. So thank you and God bless.